The Temple Institute, the #1 organization in the world pushing for the third temple to be rebuilt, has a very interesting concept that they're pushing alongside with the desire to rebuild the third temple. To quickly mention, this is the organization that receives donations, they are building artifacts, they even have the altar built for the third temple off-site ready to go in place whenever the third temple comes. And the reason this is important for Bible prophecy, because for me it makes sense that for the Daniel 9 prophecy that Jesus mentioned in Matthew 24, that this will be where the abomination of desolation takes place, where the Antichrist goes in this place and declares himself to be God. But along with having the artifacts and building the pieces for the temple, and actually even stating that they know where the Ark of the Covenant is on their website, and that people within their organization actually have the location of where the Ark is currently stored, they're also pushing something that is very interesting that also would make complete sense for Bible prophecy, and that is they're pushing for a one world religion. Now, you would think the organization pushing to rebuild the Jewish temple would be very strict on wanting to just rebuild the temple for Jewish purposes, but in their videos, on their website, and their writings, what they are saying is that this will bring all the world together, Christians, Jews, and Muslims. Again, to mention, this sounds very similar to the current Abrahamic Family House Center that is being built in Abu Dhabi, which has Judaism, Catholicism, and Islam, and is clearly an attempt to bring people to one world. And why that matters is because, as we know, the Antichrist, when he comes, will demand the worship, that everybody worship his name or his beast or the image of the beast. So worldwide worship, getting all the religions under one roof, is an extremely important task for the Antichrist to complete. Now, this is what the Temple Institute website says under a new era of universal harmony. Every prophet of Israel without exception prophesied that the third temple would be rebuilt, ushering a new era of universal harmony and peace unparalleled in the history of man. Thus, the movement to rebuild the Holy Temple is not new. It was born almost 2,000 years ago, at the moment of the Second Temple's destruction. For when the Holy Temple stood in Jerusalem, it was the soul of the Jewish people and the entire world, as we believe it will be once again. The rebuilding of the Holy Temple in our time, the reality of the Jewish experience means that the temple will be rebuilt. Many people who visit the Temple Institute are incredulous and cannot help but exclaim, "Do you really think that you will live to see the Holy Temple rebuilt?" The answer to that question is of little importance. Let us rather recall that Jewish history has a trajectory that began when the patriarch Abraham smashed his father's idols. The trajectory has spanned the millennia, and it is obvious that we are rapidly approaching climatic times, in which the Holy Temple will once again become the focal point for mankind's spiritual focus. Whether this transpires in our generation or not, we can still choose to be active participants and not simply spectators in God's bold plan for the redemption of Israel and all of humanity. So, within that, we can see that they say that the Holy Temple will be the focal point for mankind's spiritual focus, as well as it will usher in a new era of universal harmony and peace. And the reason this is, again, so important, because what the Antichrist is going to do is he's going to come onto the world and fix the world's problems, and he will have satanic miracles following him, signs and wonders that's going to deceive the whole world except the elect, because with the elect it's not possible, but he's going to deceive the entire world. And there will be a great falling away within the Christian faith and people who are lukewarm, because they're going to think that this guy who comes on the scene and brings world peace and does all these amazing things, bringing all the religions of the world together, all the political parties together, and they're looking for the Messiah. The Jewish people don't believe Jesus is the Messiah, and like Jesus said, I've said it many times, but I'll continue saying it, Jesus said in John 5 that he came and they did not receive him. Another will come in their own name, and him they will receive. It's sad and it's horrible, and that's the prayer for the lost people of the world, including the Jewish people who don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. These people need to know Jesus is the Messiah. He's the only way to get into heaven. Just like Jesus had many issues with the Pharisees and the people of that time, these people who do not believe Jesus to be the true Messiah, they need prayer and they need to come to the acknowledgement that Jesus came, he's the Messiah. Clearly, there's no other Messiah. I also, in one of my last videos, put this video in from the Temple Institute, and I'll just briefly cover it, but you can see within it when they go around and ask people in Israel and Jewish people, What do you think the third temple is going to do? What do you think it's going to be? And what these people are saying, oh, everyone's going to be equal. Oh, it's going to bring us all together. Oh, all the nations will pray. All the religions are going to pray as they stand behind the literal menorah that they're planning to put in the third temple. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. But that's what these people are saying, and that's what everyone's believing. And it's really like almost a new age type of belief, like, oh, we're all one. All religions lead to God. You know, it doesn't matter if you're Hindu. And actually, one of the guys in that video even says it, and he's Jewish. He's got his yarmulke on and everything. He says, oh, we're all just praying to God. It's just different words, you know? Like, no, it's not that. One God came. Jesus Christ came, and the only way to get into heaven, the way, the truth, and the life, and the only way to meet God and to get into heaven is through Jesus Christ. That's the only way. And that's not harsh. That's not mean. That's loving, because if you don't follow Jesus, you're not getting to heaven. So that's the truth that everyone needs to accept. And once people do, they'll realize their life gets a lot greater, and that God actually proves that he is real to them all the time when they're living in communion and complete surrender to him. I mean, I have proof of God every single day in my life. So that's my prayer, that people will come to this acknowledgement. Israel 365 News last month also posted normalizing the third temple. That's the name of the article. Yet we must not despair, because the Bit Hamadash, that's the Jewish name for the temple, could be that most unlikely of solutions that reminds us all, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, of our own human limitations, making room for our Heavenly Father. The third temple must be that unifying force for all of humanity that shows respect to all faiths in a manner the world doesn't yet recognize. A true house of prayer for all nations, as relevant today as it was when King Solomon built the first one 3,000 years ago. I mean, could you even write a more biblically perfect explanation for what the Antichrist is going to do? I mean, just imagine when the Hindus, the Jewish people, the Muslims, the lukewarm Christians, and all these people are all together, united, worshiping the beast in his image, thinking it's the most greatest thing ever, still doing their own things, but you still have to bow to the beast and his image before you go in, or before you whatever you do there. And they're gonna look at people who just trust the Bible and don't want to be united as hateful, mean, bigoted, racist people who just are clinging to the old ways when everyone's already came together. It couldn't be said more perfectly for how the Antichrist could easily take over, and how these people within these religions are calling for unity. Now, it makes sense that we shouldn't be warring with each other and killing each other, but for any Christian to say that Jesus isn't the only way to get into heaven, they're lukewarm and they're not telling the truth. And for any Jews or Muslims who are willing to just give up whatever they believe and not stick true to what they believe, clearly they don't believe their thing is true, which is why Christians will believe what is true, even to the point of their heads being cut off, as mentioned in Revelation, because we know for a fact, the ones who know for a fact, like I do and anybody who's experienced God, that Jesus is the only way. That article goes on to say, the Bible calls upon the people of Israel to return to the land of Israel, where we will assume our historic destiny to be a light unto the nations by taking on that role and transforming the state of Israel into the world's spiritual superpower. With the Jewish temple rebuilt in the heart of Jerusalem, we will revitalize the spirit of Judaism and inspire Christians and Muslims as well. It makes a lot of sense now, understanding how the Antichrist is going to have a one world system, a one world monetary system, and a one world government, and one world religion. And for the Jewish people to actually get the site, who knows what will happen? God knows. But a war, of course, could lead to that. And today on Israel 365 News, there is an article, Iran calls to launch ground offensive against Israel. So these are the amazing times we live in. Of course, we as Christians are the true temple of God. But just imagine if there's a temple rebuilt where all the religions of the world are going to, and it's built to the parameters that God had for his original temple that was in Israel, which was taken from what's actually up in heaven, because the true tabernacle, as mentioned in Revelation, is up in heaven currently, and that the New Jerusalem at the end of Revelation will come back down to Jerusalem. So it's just a copy of what's actually in heaven. Then the Antichrist will go in there and declare himself to be God. Of course, that'll make God mad, and that'll be the last thing. And then after that, wrath will pour out on the earth. So that's the way I view it. It's amazing to see. I mean, clearly they're pushing for this to be, and the whole one world aspect of that, they're pushing for this. And they're not just pushing for a Jewish only temple. It makes a lot of sense for it to play into end times prophecy. But like I mentioned a few times, and I will always mention, there's only one way. There's only one way, and it's not the religions of the world. It's not all of us coming together. While we should be loving and kind and sharing the truth to everyone else. The only way to get into heaven and to know God the Father is through his Son, Jesus Christ. Thanks for watching, and God bless.